Time now for the eNCA Money Desk with Devin Murrigan. He's standing by in studio. Devin, obviously the breaking news about us being greylisted and government failed to meet 20 of 40 obligations.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big story at the moment. Good afternoon, Masefo. So, I mean, the greylisting has impacts. I mean, it has consequences for the South African government, not just reputational damage, but of course also there's a likelihood you'll see currency flows. Rand may lose a little bit of steam. And then, you know, the idea of borrowing money on the international market when this sort of thing happens, it becomes a bit difficult. Why did it happen? Well, simply because the Financial Action Task Force feels that government has not met all the measures to actually prevent money laundering and the illicit flow. We'll get to that story in more detail in a moment. But first, this. Government is looking to finalize a 3-year wage deal with public sector workers on this new offer. It's in a draft agreement at the moment, which was submitted to unions at the start of negotiations yesterday. It's a huge subject because, remember, the public sector wage bill occupies about a third of our spending as a government. Now, the unions have threatened to go on strike if there's been no satisfaction on their part for an agreement. I want to bring in Labour analyst Terry Bell, who joins me now to unpack this further. Terry, thanks very much indeed for your time. I mean, the big difference between this budget and the few we've seen before was that the finance minister this time didn't go ahead and pencil in any increase or projected increase into his speech. And I suppose we all saw what happened the last time he did that. Where are we at the moment now? Because things have been quite tough and strained on the front of negotiations.
Well, the point is, you know, the SAFTU, that's the South African Federation of Trade Unions, and COSATU together are still a bit angry about the whole situation and talking about a strike. The PSA, Public Service Association, which is affiliated to FEDUSA, the Federation of Unions, are quite happy to go ahead with negotiations. So there's a bit of a split in the unions, and it goes back to their whole question of the fact that the government reneged the last time there was a 3-year agreement in 2018. The PSA did not want a 3-year agreement. None of the unions did. But government managed to sort of pressure COSATU, which has the biggest, along with the PSA, they're two big ones, PSA and the National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union, NEHAWU, and they said, okay, we'll go along with it. And it was a majority decision which the PSA opposed. Yeah. As a result of that, PSA tended to look a bit more militant, etc. But nonetheless, I don't know whether they won any extra members from COSATU unions as a result, I don't know. However, there was a lot of resentment, and in the final year, of course, the government reneged on the deal, which was a breach of contract. But on a technicality, they were able to get away with it, which significantly, the government has moved very rapidly this time. The draft agreement which they put forward, and this is very strange, I've never heard of the government, the employer, putting forward their basic draft agreement with wages and what they propose before they hear from the unions. It's the first time. And it's a very interesting one because it actually contains a clause which virtually does make it impossible legally for the government ever to renege again on a 3-year deal or part of a 3-year deal.
Yeah, and I mean, that will be something that will at least ease the union somewhat. I believe that there's also something in there, Terry, that it would be once again a 3-year agreement. I mean, you know, 1 year versus 3 years is a big part of what we're struggling with negotiations the last time. How do you see it?
Well, they're trying again, and what they have done is they've actually put in a clause regarding possible inflation. Consumer Price Index, the CPI, saying, all right, if it goes beyond a certain point, we'll go up more. If it goes below a certain point, we can drop back, etc. It's a very complex situation, something the unions are not going to be happy about, because who can actually predict? I mean, the prediction for next year, I think, is from the Reserve Bank is 5.3% inflation overall, but they're offering together 4.7%. At the same time, the government is also proposing to take away the 1,000 Rand gratuity payment that is non-pensionable that public sector workers already get, and roll that into part of the increase, which, as the union see it, is like taking money that already exists from their own pockets and giving it to them as an increase in their own pockets again, from moving money from one pocket to another. So it's no real increase. So there's going to be quite a lot of, I think, argument.
Yeah.
I don't think there will necessarily be a strike, however, because I really don't think the majority of members actually are up to feeling it's the time for a strike now.